Hello team, welcome to another ATPGEO politics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. This is a US politics breaking news update, but it will affect the Ukraine war as well. And it concerns the, I would claim, woefully underqualified and inadequate appointment to Secretary of Defense, that is Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth has already been in trouble for being involved in a Signal chat about Houthi strikes, where he gave a lot of sensitive information to a chat that involved an Atlantic journalist. And that caused all sorts of ruckus, but Mike Walls started that. We now have two more scandals, or really a whole host of scandals involving the Department of Defense and Pete Hegseth. And people are very, very much saying, in fact, if you look at the betting odds for this, like Polymarket, the chances of Pete Hegseth being ousted by July have gone up insanely. There are many people saying, well, first of all, Pete Hegseth has to go, and many others saying he is likely to go. His position is now untenable. So let's rewind a little bit and see what has happened. Well, what has happened with regard to this Signal chat. So remember, this is a second Signal chat, and he should have got in trouble for the first one, giving away military plans and sensitive information on a non, formal government secure platform. That should have spelt the end for him, and it would in normal times. But he's ridden that wave, and that's largely because the Trump administration forgives anyone who's just loyal enough, and they can do all sorts of wrongs. Well, Hegseth, according to New York Times, big article last night, New York Times, saying he's said to have shared attack details, and it's the same attack details, but in a second Signal chat. And the problem with this one for Pete Hegseth is the first one was created by Mike Walls. He didn't know that the Atlantic journalist was on it and shared that information. And you can argue you still shouldn't have shared that information, because many of the people on that Signal chat really didn't warrant hearing that information, given how sensitive it was. But it wasn't his thing. This was his thing. So he created this chat. And if we go to the New York Times article, Mr. Hegseth's wife, Jennifer, a former Fox News producer, is not a Defense Department employee, but she has travelled with him overseas and drawn criticism for accompanying her husband to sensitive meetings with foreign leaders. Now, she was on the chat. The other scandal between the first Signal scandal and this one was the news that he had been taking her into meetings that were sensitive meetings, where she had no clearance to be. So he's taking his wife into meetings, adding her to a Signal chat. And then we hear that Mr. Hegseth's brother, Phil, and Tim Parlatore, who continues to serve as his personal lawyer, both have jobs in the Pentagon, but it's not clear why either would need to know about upcoming military strikes aimed at the Houthis in Yemen. So his brother, his wife, and some random lawyer that works as his personal lawyer were on this Signal chat. The previously unreported existence of a second Signal chat in which Mr. Hegseth shared highly sensitive military information is the latest in a series of developments that have put his management and judgment under scrutiny. Unlike the chat in the Atlantic, in which the Atlantic was mistakenly included, the newly revealed one was created by Mr. Hegseth and included his wife and about a dozen other people from his personal and professional inner circle in January, before his confirmation as Defense Secretary, and was named Defense Team Huddle. The people familiar with the chat said he used his private phone rather than his government one to access the Signal chat. So then we understand it's not even a government phone, it's a private phone. So this is many, many levels of wrong. Also, you've got to wonder who leaked this, because it's going to have to come from someone within his inner circle, right? Because those are the people who were on this chat. The Defense Team Huddle Signal chat, it says later, until recently included about a dozen of Hegseth's top aides, including Joe Casper, Mr. Hegseth's Chief of Staff, and Mr. Parnell. So these two have just recently been kicked out of the DOD and are under investigation. The chat also includes two senior advisors to Hegseth, Dan Caldwell and Darren Selnick, who were accused of leaking unauthorized information last week and were fired. Mr. Caldwell and Mr. Selnick were among three former top Pentagon officials who proclaimed their innocence in a public statement on Saturday in response to the leak inquiry that led to their dismissals, while the Signal chat created by Mr. Walls for senior officials was criticised for sharing details of a military operation on an encrypted but unclassified app. The participants, other than Mr. Goldberg of The Atlantic, who appears to have been added accidentally, were senior government officials with reason to track the progress of the attack. In other words, that first Signal scandal, you could just about make an argument that all these other people should have been on the chat. I don't think you can really, because I don't think many of those needed to know about what was going on regarding the intricacies of strikes on the Houthis there. I personally think, that's a stretch too far, but you could just about do it if you really, really wanted. But some of the participants in the group chat created by Mr. Hegseth were not officials with any apparent need to be given real-time information on details of the operation. Jennifer Hegseth has drawn attention for her access her husband has given her. Mr. Hegseth brought her into two meetings with foreign military counterparts in February and early March, where sensitive information was discussed, a development first reported by the Wall Street Journal. Mr. Parlatore, who has been Mr. Hegseth's personal lawyer for the last 8 years, was commissioned as a Navy commander in the Judge Advocate General's Corps about a week before the Yemen strikes were initiated. In an interview before rejoining the military, Mr. Parlatore told the New York Times that he would work with Mr. Hegseth's office to improve training for the military's uninformed lawyers. So why he would need to know about military details of strikes is, beyond me, right? Mr. Hegseth's brother Phil works inside the Pentagon as a liaison to the Department of Homeland Security and as a senior advisor to the Defense Secretary. One person familiar with the chat said Mr. Hegseth's aides had warned him a day or two before the Yemen strikes not to discuss such sensitive operational detail in his Signal group chat, which, while encrypted, is not considered as secure as government channels typically used for discussing highly sensitive war planning and combat operations. So inside Pete Hegseth's house, there will likely be a room where he can discuss things using the correct platforms, and there are places where these official people need to go in order to have these kind of conversations. So just having them on an albeit encrypted app is not acceptable. I mean, this is Pete Hegseth, Tulsi Gabbard from the where is it? Because I've got that. Tulsi Gabbard, who is the director of national intelligence. She said, what do we have? We have her talking about this. I've got it here. Here we go. Let's bring this in. She said, of course, before all these scandals erupted, the following. And if she's going to remain true to her words, something should be happening regarding this. Any unauthorized release of classified information is a violation of the law and will be treated as such. So is she going to remain true to her words? She said that on the 14th of March 2025, so this year, but just before the first Signal chat scandal. And now you've got this one and Hegseth's wife going to meetings as well. So is Tulsi Gabbard going to do anything about this? Well, I doubt it. But people are saying that Hegseth's position is untenable, and not just because of this. So then there was a Politico article as well that was written, and this was written, I believe, by one of his friends, John Uliot, the former top Defense Department spokesman, wrote in the Politico magazine opinion piece. The last month has been a full-blown meltdown at the Pentagon. So that's not this piece. So there's a piece I shared with you yesterday, or I referenced yesterday, which is that the Pentagon is in a meltdown, right? And that's coming from someone who resigned from the Pentagon. And he spilled the beans. He's actually a friend of Pete Hegseth's. The Pentagon is in total chaos, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is unlikely to remain in his role, according to his former top spokesperson, who painted a scene of dysfunction, backstabbing, and continuous missteps at the highest levels of the department. Quote, "The building is in disarray under Hegseth's leadership," John Uliot wrote Sunday in the Politico magazine opinion piece. "The dysfunction is now a major distraction for the president, who deserves better from his senior leadership." Uliot, who resigned from the Pentagon last week, so not someone that's kicked out, but he just resigned, described a department in collapse. He accused Hegseth's team of falsehoods about why 3 top officials were fired last week. And I think that's risen to 5 now, 5 people around the DoD have been sacked or fired or pending investigations, etc., saying they hadn't leaked sensitive information to the media. He chastised Pentagon officials for how they handled revelations that Hegseth shared sensitive military information in a Signal chat, and he pointed to other leaks that caused embarrassment to the administration. The remarkable accusations by a former official who left only 2 days ago and insists he still supports the Trump administration's national security policies underscores the infighting and upheaval that has turned increasingly public in recent weeks. And he found himself in the centre of several controversies that added to that chaos. Uliot was sidelined after he defended the removal in March of a story discussing the service of baseball legend Jackie Robinson, part of a larger purge of diversity-related military web pages. Quote, "The last month has been a full-blown meltdown at the Pentagon, and it's becoming a real problem for the administration," he wrote. The Defense Department and White House did not respond to requests for comment. The Pentagon on Friday fired top staffers, Senior Advisor Dan Caldwell, Deputy Chief of Staff Darren Selnick, which we heard of in the other article, and Colin Carroll, Chief of Staff to the Deputy Defense Secretary. Joe Casper, Hegseth's Chief of Staff, will also leave his role in the coming days for a new position at the agency, according to a senior administration official. Politico was the first to report the firings and Casper's move, which one defense official ascribed to personality clashes between the Chief of Staff and the other men. Hegseth is now presiding, quote, over a strange and baffling purge, and has left him without senior advisors, Uliot wrote. More firings may be coming, according to the rumours in the building. Just a few more paragraphs here. The 3 fired staff backed up some of Uliot's claims in a Saturday post on X, saying they didn't know that they were terminated. The trio wrote that they, quote, have not been told what exactly we are investigated for, if there is still an active investigation, or if there was even a real investigation leaks to begin with. They charged that, quote, unnamed Pentagon officials have slandered our character with baseless attacks on our way out of the door. They expressed support for the Trump-Vance administration's mission to make the Pentagon great again, but did not mention Hegseth, with whom they worked closely. The terminations follow a purge of top military officers in February, including C.Q. Brown, Admiral Lisa Franchetti, Admiral Linda Fagan, and General James Slife. So talk about people of colour and women particularly being the target of these purges. So on and so forth. So there is utter chaos in the Pentagon. The Pentagon is obviously the centre of the military, of military intelligence in the United States. This is a security issue, and this is what happens when you put someone at level 4 in charge of the biggest bureaucracy in the world, 3 million people, and almost $1 trillion worth of budget. And this is a Fox and Friends anchor without the requisite experience and knowledge. So level 4 kind of guy when you should have a level 10 kind of guy. That is why you could argue the Pentagon is at where it is at. The question is, if they got rid of him, who would they replace him with? Some people suggesting that maybe someone like Mike Pompeo could come in and do a job, and he would actually be somewhat experienced and knowledgeable enough to do that job. But then you could just replace Hegseth with another wingnut. You remember, Hegseth is a Christian nationalist who doesn't care about the laws of war and just wants to turn the DoD and the armed forces into a bunch of warriors again, type thing. That's his approach. Anti-woke, Christian nationalist, who is on a I think a different campaign than one that the DoD should be on in terms of international global strategizing. And these are worrying times, I think, in the United States as a whole. But then you have, worrying quotes like this, I think from the article. I didn't read this one. There are likely more shoes to drop in short order, with even bigger bombshell stories coming this week. Key Pentagon reporters have been telling sources privately. Wow. So, get ready for even more controversy coming from the Pentagon. We'll have to wait and see. But this is an absolute mess, I think, for the Department of Defense. The writing's on the wall for Pete Hegseth. I mean, loads of people just casting their opinions here. It's been a month of total chaos at the Pentagon, from leaks to sensitive operational plans to mass firings. The dysfunction is now a major distraction for the president. Even strong backers of the secretary like me must admit, says Uliot, the last month has been a full-blown meltdown at the Pentagon, and it's becoming a real problem for the administration. There are likely more shoes to drop in short order, with even bigger bombshell stories coming this week. Key Pentagon reporters have been telling sources privately, and that's Uliot's own piece in Politico. But yeah, just real controversy. People saying he needs to go, and you got people like Pete Buttigieg saying, of course, advanced information on US combat operations is classified, pretending otherwise is an insult to our troops who will know this. The secretary is unfit to lead. I think his days are probably numbered. But then the Trump administration really, really values loyalty and will bend over backwards to accommodate wrongdoers in light of that kind of indisputable loyalty. So I as much as I expect Pete Hegseth to go, I also expect Trump to fight for him to stay. So who knows? 50-50. Let me know what you think. Take care. Speak to you soon.